This work was undertaken at New York University by myself, Graham Dove, and my colleagues, Adelle Fernando, Kim Hertz, Jin Kim, John Ross Rizzo, William Seiple, and Oded Nav. Orientation and mobility, or O&M, is skilled instruction in safe and independent travel for people who are blind or have low vision. It is most often conducted one-on-one and in person. Training typically includes skills such as using a white cane, learning how to attend to sounds and other non-visual information, and route planning. Experiences related to the COVID-19 pandemic and a scarcity of qualified O&M instructors have recently increased interest in O&M training that is virtual or remote. In the US, O&M specialists are certified, and this certification most often comes with obtaining a master's degree. Once qualified, O&M instructors can work with a diverse range of clients in a wide range of settings. While HCI and CSCW research has a rich history of inquiry into the needs and experiences of people who are blind or have low vision, investigations into the work and needs of O&M practitioners has to date been limited. Our research is part of a wider investigation into how digital technologies might be leading to changing work practices, with a particular focus on future work in healthcare settings. In this paper, we report on our investigation into the tools and practices of O&M specialists from across the US, a group who are in increasing demand due to an aging population. Data were collected via an online survey and from interviews with 17 experienced O&M specialists. Interviews were conducted online via Zoom between the fall of 2020 and the summer of 2021. Our semi-structured interviews probed on a number of topics associated with O&M training. In addition, we introduced low-fidelity design prompts to encourage participants to consider possible opportunities for computer-supported remote O&M practices. These prompts included a map showing quantitative data about walking, together with route paths and photographs, and videos recorded to probe into remote collaboration.
This is interesting, and as you're talking through this, I'm thinking two different mounts would be very useful. You know, one thing we're very interested in is just the visual efficiency, you know, for those who do have remaining vision, and up to very useful vision, you know, how are they using their vision? You know, for example, you could have someone with like 15-degree fields, you know, central fields that are pretty clear, but they don't know how to cross a street. You know, it'd be because they might be just looking down at the sidewalk as they're traveling. You know, this is someone who, if obviously this is, you're filming this and it's possibly chest level. So this would be indicative of someone who's looking ahead. But the thing is if it's chest mounted, that person could be looking at the ground, but just traveling straight ahead. This is interesting. And as
interviews were analysed following approaches that aim to identify themes that draw connections between data from multiple sources. This resulted in findings that highlight 4 key themes. Here we will focus on 2 of these before highlighting 2 opportunities for HCI research and design to support the work of O&M specialists. Participants' experiences with remote O&M instruction were for the most part extremely limited. The few instructors who have been experimenting with what was possible during the pandemic-induced lockdown had mainly been focused on teaching clients to use assistive apps or adapting lecture type training for remote delivery via Zoom. The importance of having a local assistant to help with tasks such as holding the client's cell phone was highlighted by those participants who had some experience. However, all participants, regardless of whether they attempted any remote interactions, were clear that client safety would always remain the highest priority in O&M. which would challenge remote instruction, especially in contexts such as navigating street crossings. We found that participants were typically familiar with the growing number of apps and services that provide remote or AI-based visual assistance for people who are blind or have low vision. And nearly all had started to investigate these, and some were working with clients who are learning or using them already. Again, safety was a key concern, and participants highlighted potential dangers alongside their general enthusiasm. Another area of interest was the way in which digital tools might be able to support matching O&M clients with guide dogs, as this was often a key reason for those clients taking O&M training. The first of the opportunities I would discuss here is the development of a physician's assistant model of remote O&M instruction and practice. In this model, a member of the client support network would act as camera person and offer help, safety, and communication. This would allow the O&M instructor to remotely watch the client practice skills and techniques and provide advice and instruction remotely. This would allow the client to build and practice skills in safe areas before a meeting in person with the O&M instructor to work on things like street crossing, where the danger is much higher. Some of our participants use GPS and Google Maps to plan routes and support their more advanced clients' independent travel. One in particular used the Apple Find My service to monitor clients' long-distance travel and make sure they arrive safely at their destination. We bring these together to close the loop and describe how O&M instructors might help and support skilled, independent travelers expand their horizons and undertake new, longer, or more challenging journeys that increase their independence. Key takeaways from this work include the acknowledgement that skilled O&M specialists are in short supply and growing demand, and that this, alongside COVID-19 experiences, has prompted increased interest in remote instruction and assessment. The smartphones and assistive and adaptive apps are increasingly sophisticated and being used by clients. That any successful model of remote O&M instruction will be strongly reliant on the ability and the availability of the client's local support network. And finally, the safety will always remain the overriding concern of O&M practitioners. Our research is made possible by the O&M practitioners who generously gave their time and experiences. It was funded by the National Science Foundation.